Welcome to There Is a Method to the Madness. My name is Rob Maxwell. I'm an exercise physiologist and personal trainer. I'm the owner of Maxwell's Fitness Programs, and I've been in business for the past 28 years. All right, today I've got a question for you, for my people out there that do cardio, which is hopefully all of you. And this could somewhat apply to my folks in the gym too. And you've been listening to this long enough. I hope that you know that both gym training, meaning weight training, strength training, and cardio are essential. So my question is, do you want to be fast now or later? I read that in a book. A coach actually asked their athlete that, and what they meant was, do you want to be fast right now in practice, or do you want to be fast when it counts in a race? And I like that. That's a good way to get your athlete's attention, or get yourself's attention, or get myself's attention. And this can apply to a couple different things, actually. It could apply to the way it was used in that case, which is that you can really gut yourself and work super hard and try to stay up with your teammates in practice when it really doesn't count for anything, and you're doing that at the sake of better recovery later because you want your ego to feel good when maybe they're doing something else or what. Or it can apply to, this is how I'm going to use this more, because I think it's more, we all practice, we all train people that exercise. So I don't want to say that it's not like high school track practice. Maybe some of us or most of us aren't doing that anymore because we're adults, but we still practice. So this will apply to two different circumstances, and I'll explain them. How about that? That's better than to just sit here and make zero sense early on and trying to explain what I'm going to explain. Let me take the first part, which is, I think, maybe the most critical part. Have you ever run in a 5K? Any people that have ever done a 5K or watched their family run in a 5K? One of the things you notice at almost every single event where there's kids is the kids, middle school, younger, not usually high school, they've learned their lesson by then, but just take off like this 5K, which for those that don't know is 3.1 miles, so that's a distance race. They take off like it's a 100-meter sprint. They take off like, man, that prize is right down the road and I'm going to sprint to it. And then if you're a seasoned veteran, you're sitting back and you're taking the old turtle approach and you're going out at the pace that you know you should, and you feel really bad for the kids because once they kind of bonk and start walking and holding their sides, and in some cases I've seen kids cry and want to be off the course and all that, and it's, the parents probably should have told them, but what can you do? Kids are going to do what they're going to do. In any event, you've seen that, and sometimes, or a lot of times, we see that with older people too, meaning not kids. And maybe it's not so extreme. Maybe they don't just jump out of the gate like it's a 100-meter sprint and they, bonk a quarter mile up the road if they make it that far. But maybe they start dying what we call the slow death at about a mile in. And they ran their best mile, their first mile, only to really have to struggle and be broken down into their easy, let me just get through this pace, and then not feel so hot about their finish. Well, I think any of us that have done 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, anything with any endurance in it, have all been through this. Here's the good news. There's a way out, and I want to explain it from a perspective of physiology, because why? There's a method to the madness. That's why I like to explain why these things occur. In the case of kids, it's really not so much this, because they don't have really a trained anaerobic system yet, And so really what happens with them is partly they go out way too fast and they're starting to have some of the physiological consequences to that, but not like adults do. It's more like kind of a mental thing. They had no idea what was in front of them, and they ran out, and they just basically didn't really have the gas to go much further, at least at any kind of consistent tempo, because what a lot of adults don't understand, and this includes gym teachers and unfortunately people that should understand, is that kids prepubescent don't have a trained aerobic system yet, meaning they have a really hard time doing anything with continuity with regarding exercise, which is why we professionals like to teach the professionals how to better train prepubescent kids, which is do things like little circuits, brief activities with rest in between, because that's what their body and minds are mature enough to handle. But this isn't about that. I just feel bad for the kids that happens to, because it might just make them hate these things, and then when they get older they think it's going to be like that, and in reality it's not. But again, that's not what this is about. But I think watching the kids go out and kind of blow up like that is a good illustration of what I'm trying to get across. Now, the reason why it happens to us that have pretty mature anaerobic systems and aerobic systems, okay, is because we run into what is called oxygen deficit, all right? As John Lennon once famously said, instant karma is going to get you. In other words, the body is going to pay you back. We only got what we got, fitness-wise. So what that means is our systems are designed. So our energy systems, there are 3, are designed to provide more ATP, adenosine triphosphate, to the working muscles. So we have a currency. We have a currency that our body spends to keep physically going forward. And the currency in the body is adenosine triphosphate. We only store enough in each little muscle for like 2 seconds. That's nothing. So what ends up happening is we have a system, we have 3 systems in fact, that are in our body to help keep producing ATP so we can keep going. I'm going to do these very briefly. The immediate energy system is literally intramuscular, meaning there isn't a great metabolic system that provides more ATP. It's intramuscular. So the ATP is broken down again in a couple seconds. It rejoins with its buddy creatine phosphate. You see athletes that take creatine. That's why. They probably don't realize that's why, but that's why. And the creatine forms with the broken down ADP and makes more ATP. All that happens within 8 to 12 seconds, which is not relevant in an aerobic event like a 5K or long distance swim or bike or whatever. I'm just explaining the energy systems, and I'm not trying to turn this into biochemistry. The second system is the anaerobic system. And the anaerobic system provides energy for roughly 30 to 90 seconds. So it's brief. When you're at the gym and you're doing a set of leg extensions and your muscles start breaking down and start fatiguing because they're running out of energy, your body is using the anaerobic system to provide more energy. That's great. The problem is, with that comes lactic acid, and then you start feeling the lactic acid, which is a byproduct of anaerobic energy, and your muscles start slowing down and suddenly come to a stop somewhere around 90 seconds or so if you're taking the exercise to fatigue. That's the anaerobic energy system. The aerobic energy system lasts anywhere from 2 minutes to as long as all day. It's the constant source of energy and where you're burning mostly fat in the system. Now, normally, we're not in any one system. We're in and out of all these systems. Let's say you're doing your 5K and all of a sudden, and this happens, or it happens when you're training, all of a sudden a snake jumps out the road. Hey, I saw it just the other day riding my bike down the path. So all of a sudden you veer a little bit one direction to miss it, and you sprint because you're startled and the adrenaline's pumping, you sprint out of the way. You maybe, after the fact, you're huffing and puffing a little. That's because you went into that immediate energy system, which is very brief. Or maybe you're getting to a hill and you're climbing that hill and your muscles are starting to burn. Now you're bouncing higher into that anaerobic energy system, which you can only do for a short period of time, remember, 30 to 90 seconds. So you're kind of in a little bit of both, but you're definitely teetering more towards the anaerobic system. So you get over the hill, you slow down a little bit, you get back into majority aerobic system. Now, pretty much the only time you're almost in your aerobic system entirely is when you're at rest, like right now. But even still, I'm borrowing a little bit from the anaerobic system. We're never completely in one. All right? All this hopefully is going to make sense in a minute. So when you're doing a 5K, I'm just going to use a 5K as an example, and you start out at an unrealistic pace. Well, what's an unrealistic pace? Well, an unrealistic pace is a pace you've never run for the duration of a 5K before. So your aerobic pace is basically the pace that you can do, your best pace you can do for 3.1 miles. So say you go out faster than that because you're feeling good. You think, this feels pretty good, like I got this. But you're only a half mile in, 3/4 of a mile in, maybe a mile in. Well, sure, you've got this because it's the first mile, but if it's unrealistic, as John Lennon said, instant karma is going to get you, because somewhere a little bit past maybe a mile and a half, you start slowing down. Why are you slowing down? Because you're in an oxygen deficit. And just like a deficit with your bills or whatever, you've got to pay it back. So now your body is pulling from the anaerobic system. Well, it borrowed from the anaerobic system early on to get you up to that speed. And now your body is slowing you down to balance everything out. That's how it works. That's an oxygen deficit. So if you want to avoid that, the key is to really, really know yourself, know what pace you should run, and it helps to have the Garmin's and pay attention to the watches. Yes, all that. But guess what? I've had all of those things plus a heart rate monitor and still have gone out too fast and all of a sudden start slowing down. And it's one thing if you're slowing down and everything evens out and you run your best race, but typically you do not run your best race. And you're not running faster later like you want to, because don't you actually want to feel relatively fit crossing the finish line, or do you want to feel like it was the worst 30 or so minutes, whatever, of your life? Now, granted, there's a happy medium, nothing's black or white. If you go out slower than the pace you can run, then you feel disappointed because you have way too much gas in the tank in that final mile or mile and a half. And we see that too with the inexperienced kids. They come flying the last 100 yards like it's a sprint, and okay, great, but that probably means they left a lot of time out on the run course. Now, I got to back up, and say all of this is dependent on if you want to run your best race. If you don't, then who cares? Walk it, run it, do whatever you want, and fly the fastest 100 yards of your life at the end to look like the superhero coming across the finish line. That's great. That doesn't matter. What I'm talking about is trying to explain from a physiological standpoint what happens in your body. And there's just basically no way around it. Your body is going to pay you back. So if you want to be your best aerobically, you really need to learn to stay below what we call just below that anaerobic threshold, where your body isn't crossing too far into that anaerobic zone to where it's going to pay you back. So for example, let's say you can run a 9-minute mile. That's the your best aerobic pace. Like you can run a 9-minute mile, you can do that for a 5K, you can go slightly slower than that for a 10K, slightly slower than that than a half marathon. That's like your aerobic pace. They shouldn't be these huge changes in pace. If they are, you just don't know your pace yet, and that's okay. But let's say it's a 9-minute mile, but you're feeling good, you're feeling energetic, and even worse, you got your buddies from work lining up with you at this local 5K. So you bust out of the chute, and you look down at your watch, and a half mile in, you're running like an 8:15 pace. So 45 seconds per mile faster than you know you can run aerobically. And you think, damn, this training has worked. My coach Rob is freaking phenomenal. He is the best, man. I can't believe I have taken this time off of my 5K. And you get to that first mile and you notice, oh, I'm running a little bit slower than I was when I was feeling euphoric at the half mile point, but I'm still like an 8:30. I'm feeling pretty good, but I'm so much faster than I thought. And then all of a sudden, you know that song, The Wheels Fell Off the Bus? Well, there it goes. Somewhere around a mile and a half, all of a sudden you're slower than your goal pace. You're not even at the 9 you wanted to run. You're like at a 9:15. Like, oh no. Well, you know, that's okay because I'm going to balance out what I did that first mile with what I did this mile, and I'm still going to be, you know, right around 18. Because then you hit mile 3, and so now that little 45-second window you had has gone in the opposite direction because all deficits have to get paid back. So now you're running like a 9:45, an exact 45-second difference. And now you're like, oh, this is terrible. I hate him. Rob sucks. He's a terrible coach. I don't know what I'm doing training. I pay this guy money. Oh my God, this 5K was a horrible idea. I'm not any more fit. And you cross the finish line. You walk up to me. You give me the finger. And naturally, I'm trying to have a little fun here. But I think you get the point. And the truth is that that's what happens. So if you go, say, 45 seconds faster than you should, you're going to be paying that 45 seconds back. The beauty is if you go 5 seconds faster, you're only going to be paying about 5 seconds back, and that's not that bad. You don't die that slow death. So really it's about learning how to pace yourself and understanding how to be realistic with your times. And you can find that out by simply, again, I'm using 5Ks as an example, but this could be for swimming. This could, you know, now in triathlon, it's pretty cool. I had a friend that did St. Anthony's, a big triathlon over in St. Petersburg over the weekend, and she shared her splits with me, and it's really cool. Like they show you their swim time, and of course the swim is a little subjective because it's harder to measure water, but they get it really, really close, and they break their swimming paces down into 100 meters. Like, in other words, like what was your pace per 100? And, you know, that's really cool. So that would kind of be like what your mile pace would be, almost like in a 5K. So I can look at that and go, oh, wow, like 1:42, 1 minute and 42 seconds per 100. And I can relate to that because I swim. So I'm like, oh, wow, that's a good pace. So really it's the same for the water too. Like if you're in a triathlon or an open water swim, and you know you can swim basically like 100 meters in about 2 minutes, then all of a sudden you jump out really, really fast because you're excited and you want to stay with all the faster swimmers. And you know that all this is so common, by the way. I'm not making fun of anybody to do it because we all do it. I'm just trying to explain what happens from a physiological standpoint. So all of a sudden you jump out and they don't know. I mean, maybe in the pros they do, but for us amateurs, they don't know. They don't break down what your first 100 was and all that. They're just averaging it all out. I'm just using this as an example. But say your first 100 or 200, you were at like 90 seconds instead of 2 minutes. Well, you're going to pay that back. You know, the second half of the swim, you're going to be going like 2 minutes and 30 seconds per 100. to pay it back. So if you went over 30 seconds over your 100 pace, you're going to be minus 30 seconds the second round. So the key is really finding that pace, because what happens is, again, the more anaerobic you get, the more lactate you're producing. And the more lactate you're producing, the more you're going to be slowing down. That's just what happens. You know it when you're doing weight training and you're doing a leg extension or you're doing bicep curls, and all of a sudden you start feeling that lactate and you keep going. You know it doesn't just get better. The lactate keeps getting acutely worse and worse and worse until you stop. Well, when we're running or cycling, there's just more of a gradual buildup of it. It doesn't come on so fast, but it does come on because it is a physiological side effect of movement. So the more we move, or the more intense we move, the more lactate we're going to have. It doesn't just go away. It doesn't go away. In a leg extension, you have the benefit of being able to just stop, and as soon as you stop, the burn goes away, right? Well, it's not like it acutely builds up when you're running a 5K and all of a sudden, oh, my legs burn. No. What you're going to feel instead of your legs, you're going to feel kind of heavy. You're going to have labored breathing because they're all correlated to each other. So the more anaerobic we get, the more we start to hyperventilate. And then we're producing more carbon dioxide. And then that is going to slow us down. So they all go hand in hand. So the moral of the story is this. Don't get led astray by your ego, by other people, by getting excited. These are all things that can do it. Like you're excited and you think, I got this, and you run out really fast, and you're like, that guy over there always beats me significantly in a race, but yet I'm running with him the first half mile. Well, you didn't just get that much faster. Now, if you're new to these things, sure, maybe you have. But when you're experienced, no, it's just he's being disciplined or she's being disciplined and pacing themselves, and you just got carried away with yourself. You're going to pay it back. That's the only point. Now, if you want to pay it back, that's okay. I mean, it's not the end of the world. You're still out there running. You're still out there training. You're still out there swimming. You're still out there cycling. I'm just trying to help you be better so you can have a better event, like it a little bit better, and do your best. And it's a hard lesson to learn. You have to realistically know yourself. That's humility. What pace can you run? What have you been doing in training? You're never going to be able to match your fastest mile for 3 miles. That's not going to happen. So instead, just be realistic. Set the pace early and try the best you can to hold it. Now, I'll wrap this up by saying we're all different. I have a client who he's become a great 5K runner. He's a master's runner. He started distance running as a master's athlete, which is over 40, and he's actually over 50. And we've tried different strategies with him. He's tried the even mile, like I'm talking about, which I'm suggesting, and he feels like he goes faster if he just goes for broke and goes all out in the first mile and then slows down the next 2. He feels like overall that's his best race. Okay. Right now, that's been the strategy. It's, he knows he doesn't feel great the 3rd mile. I think later on he may find, once he learns himself a little bit better and, works on technique and thing, that he can bounce that in a little bit, and he might still have his best mile as his 1st mile, but maybe it won't be so drastic. Maybe it'll just be a little bit faster than his mile 2. The key is we just don't want big extremes. So yes, everybody is different, but ideally, the best way to run your best race are even split miles. When I haven't done a half marathon in a really long time. It's been a while. When I was doing all those different distances, the half marathon was probably my best race. I did a good job of just balancing the miles. I knew where I needed to be, and I was able to stay within 5 seconds of that per mile. Unless there was big hills or something, then it would adjust. But in flats, I was able to stay within that, within 5 seconds. And I ended up having my best races. I just felt really consistent. And then I would have 5Ks where, even though it's a shorter race, where there'd be like a minute between the miles. And that's not an ideal way to have your best race. I mean, you still would like to try to keep them within 5 seconds. So why does that happen? Same reason I described earlier: excitement, ego, not knowing myself well at the time, whatever. But it's not a great strategy, okay? So, term of the day, oxygen deficit. What you borrow from must get paid back. It's a physiological law. And by the way, there's a difference between that and oxygen debt. Uh-oh. What is oxygen debt? Well, you have to wait till next time because today is oxygen deficit. But I will tell you this, it is two different things, but both of them have to be paid back. I want to thank our sponsors, Jonathan and Lynn Gilden at the Gilden Group at Realty Pros. You know, they're the best. You talk about athletes. These two are very, very good athletes. They have the most reviews, 5-star reviews on Zillow, and they have over 100 million sold between the two of them. Their goal is to provide the highest level of customer service. And you know what? Check out the reviews because it is absolutely backed up. If you need them, please give them a shout. Jonathan or Lynn, I know them. I can vouch for them. 386-451-2412. And until next time, be Max Fit and be Max Well.